You're listening to another episode of the Ana Vivo podcast. Thank you for your time. Okay, so I will open us up in prayer, and then we'll jump right into this. Lord, we just come before you this afternoon, and we are blessed to be here and alive and good health, and be able to share more about our lives and our stories with our listeners. We thank you for the time of my guest today and the listeners who faithfully tune in every week, and we are excited to kind of explore topics that are not traditionally things we explore, at least in our religious context. So we are looking forward to that. And we thank you again for this time, and we pray that you would be honored and glorified through this. We pray all this in your holy mighty name. Amen.
Amen.
And this is how we start. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ana Vivo podcast. We are live on the air, coming to you live from beautiful Whidbey Island, Washington, which is the largest island in the Washington state and one of the largest islands in the entire United States. So, continental United States. Definitely one of the most inhabited, largest, and most premier naval air station on the West Coast. They filmed Top Gun 2 here, and I'm happy to be here surrounded by my friends and guests, honored guests today. Dr. Dick Haines, welcome back again to the show.
It's great to be back.
Thank you. I have Susan, an eyewitness that we get to hear from later this morning or this afternoon, which is pretty exciting. Thanks for coming, Susan.
No problem.
And Gloria, thank you as well. Another eyewitness of a totally different event that we're going to explore. So thanks for your time today. So, Dick, I'm going to have you sort of give the audience and all of us an introduction into what the event is that we're about to walk into, and before we jump into the story here, from your scientific and professional point of view. And it's important for the audience to know here that Dr. Haines has met with these individuals separately and interviewed them, and they also have been interviewed, from my understanding, on TV and on the radio, or just the TV? Just the TV. Just the TV. Okay. Mm-hmm. And of course by friends and family and myriad of other people as well, I'm sure. So, all right, Dr. Haines.
Okay, Tim. What you're going to hear today, ladies and gentlemen, is a very interesting set of reports of what we would call a close encounter of the first kind. And what this refers to is either daytime or nighttime, in this case both, sighting of a craft or a disc or an object at fairly close range, something like 500 feet to 1,000 feet. It's one of the most well-known categories, and also one of the most frequent categories from a statistical point of view. More of these CE1s have been reported than any other kind.
Oh, I did not know that. Interesting.
Yeah.
And there's 5 total categories?
There's a total of 5 categories, okay. Right. We talked about that in another
right.
broadcast. So that's kind of the background here, and I'm as excited as you are to hear what the story is.
Yeah, so we'll start with you, Susan. Okay. If you want to give us kind of the time and place, location for our audience that may not be familiar with Whidbey Island even, and then just share with us as much as you care to.
Okay. So when I saw the spaceship, the UFO, we were all together as a family. We had been out to the base, to the movies, which is 2.5 miles from here.
Okay. Yeah, the Sky Warrior Theater on base. Okay.
Yeah, it still looks exactly the same, by the way.
Same.
It does. I took a picture of it. So we had been to the movies, and my mom and I have told Dick the story separately and together. And I wish she was here with us. She could tell the story even better than I can. But we were coming down Crosby Road, which is about a mile from here.
Okay.
At the bottom of Airline Way, just outside of Hillcrest. We came over a hill, and there it was. And it was to the It was so shocking. My mom slammed on the brakes. Now, there was about 6 of us kids in the car.
Yeah, was this like recently? Was this years ago?
I'm sorry, 1967.
Okay.
And we figured out it was in June because
Oh.
the movie starts at 7 at the Base Theater.
Nice.
And it was dusk
Yeah.
when we were coming over this little hill. And
Okay.
this thing was in the valley and it was hovering.
Hmm.
And the lights were spinning. And it was a disc, and it was huge. And your brain, I know my brain was like, I don't know what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
But it's not normal.
You were
It's
old
not-
enough to recognize this.
I was 10.
Okay.
My brother was 11. One of my brothers was 11. The other brother was 9. And our cousins, which I just found out a couple of years ago, our cousins were in the car with us.
Oh,
They
interesting.
had come up from California.
Okay.
And my aunt was in the front seat. And we sat there staring at it for a really long time.
Like parked at the top
Just
of at Crosby or Airline.
Yeah, right at the corner where
Okay.
it wise off to go to West Beach.
Okay.
And then it started to move.
Mm.
And I told Dick this. I clearly heard, and I thought it was another lady, but it was my aunt, say to my mother, "What do you want to do, Joyce?" And my mother said, "I'm going to follow it.
Contemplating
Step on it."
the consequences of this.
With all of his kids in the car. And
She sounds like an adventurous lady.
she was
scared.
Her,
No.
no, we weren't, because my mom, she was a very curious person.
Yeah.
And she knew, and having come from China Lake and being a military wife, this was not normal. This was not a thing that we had at that time in
Right.
1967.
Right.
So we,
Especially out here on the island. I mean, like China Lake, even I would expect something more like this to show up.
Yes.
But definitely not here at
no,
NAS Whidbey Island.
no. And it was like like it was hiding almost, like it was just hovering in the valley, and
Yeah.
all these trees were blocking any signals, and we thought it felt like that way to me, that it was
Right.
kind of hiding, and then
Right.
it started to move, and it went up and over the little hill, and my mom gave it the gas. We were doing 50 down the hairpin road that's still the
Yeah.
same, and she kept saying, "Where is it? Where is it?" And so we were all looking out the windows, and then my brother says, "Oh, there it is, there it is," and it was over the area where they used to do bombing practice, which
Oh,
is now Joseph Whidbey State Park.
Right, right. Yeah.
So it, in a flash, moved over to the upper end of that. It's actually called Sunset Beach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we called it West Beach. It was all,
Right.
the whole island, that half was West
Yeah.
Beach. And it was on the cliff side, not
Right
on the
where
lower.
that little pullout is now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was
kinda
twice
halfway
as
up the
big.
hill.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that was twice as big then, that
Okay.
pullout. The rest of it fell down.
Right. Okay.
So we raced up there. And when we got there, it was hovering off of the water. It was hovering right off the beach from us.
Wow.
And it was just huge.
So it's almost like the propulsion system it wasn't just moving as if a jet was moving. It was able to hover. It was able to move quickly, come up and down.
And then when I say quickly, I mean like that.
Yeah.
It just, and we watched it for the longest time. I told Dick, we did do the regression to see if I could remember anything else.
Okay.
But we lost time.
Yeah.
I know we lost time because when we got there, it was still dusk, but it went dark, and we didn't get home until after 10.
Wow.
So it was like 10:30, almost 11 before we got home. And we're like, I know we didn't stand. I don't feel like we stood
Yeah,
out
West
there that
Beach
long.
isn't that long of a
No,
drive.
no, not at all. But we did see it. It went over to Anacortes in the snap of a finger. It
Yeah.
went from the beach to Anacortes, and
Wow,
all you saw
wow.
was this bright light.
Yeah.
And then it zoomed over to the Olympic Peninsula,
Okay.
over there by Port Angeles, and then it came over towards Victoria, and then it just either turned out the light or it just left. But we
Wow.
thought it was kind of maybe showing off for us. And
Can
you
I
look like-
ask you
Yeah.
if did you have your windows down, or when you were outside, could you hear any noise?
we did actually pile out of the car. I don't.
Like at
my-
Sunset Beach at that
Yeah.
pullout?
At
once you
the
got
cliff
there?
side.
Okay.
Yeah, on the cliff side. Yeah, we did. we all got out. All of us got out of the car, and it was windy. It's always windy down there, but it was. We could hear a humming, like a humming sound, but it was real deep. Like felt it more than heard it.
Yeah.
Kind of humming.
Interesting.
And the last permanent memory that I have, and this is really weird because I don't know why it appears this way in my brain, but it's a picture of me and my brothers, one on each side, holding hands from behind.
As if you are
Like
outside
I'm-
of your own body, looking back at yourself.
Yes, like I'm looking at the back of us, and
Wow.
I don't know why that's the last memory I have.
Yeah.
But that's what I remember,
Wow.
and that yeah.
How big would you say this thing is if you had to measure it, or if it's stayed still enough long enough for you to actually measure this thing?
It had to be 30 feet or
Okay.
bigger.
Okay.
It was huge.
Wide and more like a saucer, traditional UFO saucer
The
style.
saucer, yeah.
Okay.
We didn't see there was not like a bubble on the top. It just
Yeah.
was smooth.
No little green men waving at
Yeah,
you, that kind
no.
of thing. Yeah.
I wish we had. No, and it's something that I try to, when I tell this story, I try to tell people is when you see this, you know that it's real. You
Right.
don't, there's like your brain just, it's like, well, I'm hoping to see Bigfoot also.
Yeah.
But at the same time, people look at you like you're crazy, which is why we didn't talk about it, especially in a Navy town.
Yeah.
Because if you mention that around people on the playground, they're going to start going, "Oh, you want to talk to that girl."
Well,
She's-"
I'm sure there's the ostracizing of it, but then there's also probably a lot of the classified and at the time the Cold War and a lot of things that are just like we could get locked up, we could get not just made fun of, but we could get
Sure.
dad could get in trouble on base,
Yep.
or whatever. So I'm sure there's a lot of that
Well,
kind of.
we did have the lady across the street who was her husband was a captain in the military, and she called the base officer or the day officer.
Yeah.
And they told her that we must have seen a weather balloon.
Oh.
Right. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
no. We even as kids we were like, we know what a weather balloon looks
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
And they did a lot of those down in China Lake.
Right.
So yeah, so we didn't talk about it even as a family very much until years later. And my mother loves to tell the story now. But my younger brother became a Navy pilot, and he and I, one Christmas, I said, "So what do you remember that UFO we saw?" And he goes, "Oh yeah." And I said, "What do you
don't
see
forget
out
it.
there?" Yeah, you don't forget
don't
it.
forget those
And I
things.
said, so what do you see out there?" And he goes, "I have seen some stuff, but I can't tell you about it."
I will lose my clearance and my job.
And his job, yeah. So he never did get to tell me, and he passed away too. So
Oh.
we didn't get a chance to talk much more. But I did find out he never told his wife.
Yeah. Wow. Well,
Susan, could I ask a question? Mm-hmm. Would you describe for us the lighting, if there was any, on this object?
Well, and that's funny because my other brother and I talked about that. He thinks they were red and white, and I think I'm not sure if I put the red light in it because he said, or if I remember white lights spinning
Spinning.
and maybe a yellow,
Well,
but maybe the disc was spinning. See, I don't know.
But when you're saying spinning, do you mean continuous smooth movement or lights on a theater marquee?
No,
lights-
like it was moving, like it was moving.
What direction was it moving? Rotating?
I want to say counter. I remember the lights coming at me.
Counterclockwise?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Very good. That's useful.
yeah.
How big were these lights?
No, they were probably big as that.
Uh-huh.
They were big.
They were
big,
big.
as that is for the audience, 2 dinner plate sizes.
Yes, that's
For
good.
those
How
listening.
many total lights could you see at any moment?
4 or 5.
Okay.
4 or 5.
Okay.
Yeah,
Evenly spaced.
yeah, evenly spaced.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And just a quick final question. As far as this sound you heard, have you ever heard it before or afterward or some similar object producing it?
No,
No.
no,
Not like the deep growl of the jets today that
No.
are out there rumbling, not
no.
that kind of
This
growl.
was more like like a low humming that you could feel with your feet.
Would it be somewhat similar to a diesel locomotive, just in idle, for instance?
Kind of like that, yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, just a low.
Okay.
It was hardly noticeable unless you were paying attention to
These
it.
are very important details.
Dr. Haines with the scientific questions.
Can't
Yeah,
help it.
the steam locomotive was good.
Well, good. Well, I anything else you want to add before we'll come back to you for another question of the story here. But
Okay.
anything else you want to add on the encounter itself?
No,
Okay.
that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
Gloria, let's hear your account, which I'm told, and this is the first time I'm getting to hear either of these, are separate events, and but around the same time-ish.
Well, I don't know. We have figured it out that we think it was in 1964.
Okay.
So
just a
I
little
would have
bit
been,
earlier.
and it would have been April 22nd,
Wow.
which was
You just said you don't know, but you just gave me an exact day.
yeah,
and
but I'm
month
not
and year.
sure on the year.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was 64.
Okay.
We were able to kind of pinpoint it
Okay.
from an interesting letter, paper that a friend of mine at school interviewed me 2 days after the sighting.
Oh wow.
And
okay.
I have a copy of that original letter with
How
me.
old were you going to school that someone's interviewing you?
Oh, I was, if I was 13, I think I was in probably about
Middle school or
sixth grade or
Okay.
something, seventh grade.
so someone at your school is interview. What school is this?
Coopville,
Okay.
Coopville High School.
Someone at the Coopville High School is or middle school is interviewing you for the newspaper 2 days after the event.
Well, actually, they were writing this for a school, in one of their English class or
okay.
something. They interviewed me. It was something they did for homework,
Yeah.
or she wanted to do it.
Right.
I don't know if it was actually an assignment, but she did turn it in because you can see the teacher's grading on it if she
cool.
misspelled something or the grammar wasn't quite right.
Okay.
But it started, I was down at my friend's house. In those days, we live out on West Beach, kind of near where Susan was, but further up,
Further south.
further south
audience,
on West
okay,
Beach
okay.
by Bell's, across the road from Bell's Strawberry Farm.
Okay.
And in those days, there was nothing there.
Yeah.
There was like our farm and then the Mary's farm, my friend. And that was about it, Bell's.
Yeah.
There was nothing like
Right.
that is today. So anyway, Mary and I played together a lot. We were the only two girls that lived out there. And I went down to her house. We were playing after school, I believe, and they asked me to stay for dinner, which I did. And then Mary was going to walk me partway home, which we did a lot of that. You know, we'd accompany each other either to go to my house or to go to her house.
Right.
And it was starting to get late. It wasn't dark yet, but, you know, it was after dinner. We were walking home. And on a kind of a little path, and on the west side was a field and then the water, high bluff.
Right. Okay.
And we're walking home, and this thing, it seemed like it came out of nowhere. I mean, we kind of looked up, and there it was.
Wow.
And it was weird because we never seen anything like that before. We
Yeah.
knew it was something odd. There was no sound whatsoever.
Really?
No sound.
Wow.
Silent.
I mean,
Completely.
you're out- this
but
is-
how can it move?
Yeah, and you're outside too. It's not like you're in a car in this
Yeah.
case. You're outside and
No, we're
there's no
outside, and had jumped down in the tall grass. There was a hedgerow,
Yeah.
and we were like hiding.
You weren't as curious as Susan and her family were. They're just like, take me.
No,
That was my mom.
we weren't terrified,
Yeah.
but we definitely were scared.
Okay.
And it was just hovering there in the field.
Okay.
It was shaped like a football, and it had red lights.
Interesting. How
Red lights around the bottom.
how big would you just say this object was?
It seemed like it was pretty big, and in some of the reports I've done before, we kind of estimated it, but I don't really
Yeah.
remember. But it was fairly close, and we just watched it, and
Yeah.
it just hovered there,
Wow.
soundless. And then it probably wasn't as long as we thought it was,
Yeah.
because we were like, "Oh, this is scary." But then when it left, it just kind of went away quickly, no sound,
Wow.
and kind of dropped below the bluff.
Okay.
And I think that's kind of the last we saw of it.
You didn't see it going out over
Well,
the water?
you know,
or-
thinking back, I'm not sure if we kind of saw it, but But if it did do that, it was so fast that we
Yeah.
couldn't
It may
hardly
just the
track
blink
it.
of the lights or
Yeah, it
something,
was
yeah.
just it was gone.
with no sound still.
No,
Moving with
no
sound.
sound. It never had any sound, and that was what I thought was the most weirdest part of the
Yeah,
whole thing.
the
How could it
terrifying
move? How
part.
could it hover?
Yeah.
How could it do anything without
Sound.
no sound? No sound at all.
Wow.
So we ran home. She ran home to her house. I ran home to my house, and we were all excited and telling our parents, and they were kind of like, "Oh, really? You know? Oh, that was nice."
That's so cute.
No, nobody. I don't think it was that they didn't believe us, but
Yeah.
they really weren't too concerned about it or
Right,
anything. It
right.
was just another thing. Like we saw a deer when we were walking home.
This is like I don't know, you probably don't watch the Stranger Things episodes on Netflix, but
I do.
I mean, this sounds exactly like something like that, Susan.
Yeah,
These
so-
kids in the 60s that are out on their bikes, just, not, just doing things after dark. And, nobody has cell phones or playing video games
Nope.
or whatever.
Nope.
And so this is what you do. And
Yep.
and this is what you experience. And the parents are like, yeah, that's so sweet,
That's
Gloria.
cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not concerned for your safety at
No.
all. Thanks, Mom and Dad.
They weren't. They really weren't.
Chasing it, in fact.
My mom and my aunt called us the last of the free range children.
The free range. That's a good.
Yeah,
That's a good
We-
title
and
for a
we
book.
didn't have phones, and we did
Yeah.
go at 6 a.m. We'd leave the house, and we wouldn't come home until
Oh,
dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Same-
somehow
same thing
you're
with
still
us.
both here today, just
Yeah,
fine.
and we survived.
Yeah.
And it was interesting for me to hear your story about your getting interviewed for the paper. My mom insists that she saw an article in the Whidbey News Times about UFOs.
Interesting.
I
Somebody
remember
else-
seeing that too.
She said it was in Juan de Fuca, which
Wow.
is
Yes.
a couple miles
Yeah.
down.
It was around the same time
Yes,
that we saw her.
that's what she said. And
Yeah.
I searched every way I could and could not find a trace of that.
Interesting. And Whidbey News
so-
Times would not have a copy themselves that they could produce?
Their archives are now held by Norse Sound or somebody.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You have to go all the way to, I think, Port Townsend
Okay.
to access. But on the computer, I did my best, and I couldn't
Yeah.
find any
I
any
do
mention.
remember reading, and
That's
because we
good.
always got the News Times, and I do remember reading
That's
about.
because I was like, oh, somebody else saw that article. So
So
verification.
you saw
for,
it, and this was an article before you witnessed the
It
event?
was
or
after.
the
I
event?
think it
Okay.
was after.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
later.
Wow. Okay. Yes, Dr. Haines.
Gloria, could I ask a couple questions about what you saw, the appearance of, you said a football, which is a good first glimpse of the shape. Tell us about the colors of the lights.
They were red.
Like a fire engine red on a
Yeah, they were
emergency light?
bright red.
Uh-huh.
And this was a lot of years ago, so I thought they were just stationary. But when I read back something that when the girl interviewed me at school, I think I said they were blinking.
Blinking on and off.
Yeah, I think I
Uh-huh.
have that with me. But,
Oh, good. Wonderful.
that was 2 days after I saw it.
Sure.
So I think things were probably pretty
That was the most
fresh
yeah.
in my mind.
I wish somebody
Then-
had interviewed us right after.
How many lights did you see at any one time?
Several.
Several.
Yeah,
2, 3,
probably more than 3.
4, 5?
Yeah, probably.
And were they
I think.
evenly spaced?
Yes,
They
I think
were.
they were.
Uh-huh. And what shape were each of the lights? The
They
red
just
lights?
seemed like they were little red lights.
Little.
Not huge, but we weren't right next to it, so they probably would have been about the size of a headlight or
Okay.
bigger,
Okay.
maybe bigger.
Okay. Good. Okay.
And the object color, it was still not dark yet. So could you get an idea of the color of the object? Is it traditional silver and
Yeah,
shiny,
I
or
think
was
it was
more?
just kind of shiny silver.
Okay.
I thought this was so interesting because I had forgotten all about that. This classmate interviewed me.
How did you
And she
come
wrote
back
it up.
across this
Her
homework assignment?
cousin is one of my best friends.
Okay.
And she was cleaning up things at her home, and she found this, and she gave it to my girlfriend,
Oh,
and
cool.
she gave it to me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But it was
Could you read
interesting.
that section for us?
Sure.
From this?
Yeah, I could read If you want, I could read the whole thing. It's not too long. It's up to whatever you think.
If it's pertinent, let's do it.
Okay. UFOs. Gloria, I won't say my last name, and Mary saw a UFO on the night of April 22nd. This is how Gloria described her experience to me when I called her. She did this over the phone on April 24th. It all began the night of April 22nd. Gloria had spent the afternoon and dinner at Mary's, and Mary was walking Gloria halfway home. They had both read the articles about UFOs in the Reader's Digest and Life magazine, and they were exchanging opinions on UFOs. Suddenly, they both looked up and saw one. It was shaped like a football and had red lights all around the bottom that were not blinking, but shining steadily. Gloria said that there was no sound whatsoever as the UFO hovered in the air for about 10 seconds and then came slowly toward Earth and then disappeared behind a clump of trees. The object was not very high and not very far away, but Gloria did not give an estimation of the distance. As soon as it disappeared, Gloria and Mary returned to their own homes. Gloria commented that she had believed in UFOs, but she never believed she herself would actually see one. So now do you believe?
Oh, cool.
That was the...
That's really awesome that you still have that.
I know, it's
she
amazing
get it?
that I have
I wish
this.
I had written something down.
Did you get an A+ on that assignment?
I don't know. The teacher corrected some areas here, but something that was interesting is that the next day I was all excited about it too, and I drew a picture in class of it.
Okay.
And I wish I still had that. That's
Yeah.
been lost over the years.
Sure.
But
Wow.
I had a little write-up about it myself
Yeah.
in school and a picture.
Can I ask a question? As a result of the experience you and Mary had, has your life changed in any way?
I don't think so. I don't really feel like it did, although that I was always wondering if I was going to see it again. And I didn't for a while, and I don't think Mary was as scared as I was maybe, but for a while I didn't want to walk that same path
Yeah.
by myself.
Right.
Yeah, that's a
So-
question I ask everybody. And Susan, could you answer the same question? As a result of your experience with that station wagon full of people, has your life changed as a result of that?
I think because of seeing it that I was more open to there being people that have come to visit Earth. Not, I don't know if they're people, but of other beings out there.
Yeah.
I really think that kind of led me. I got heavily into science fiction and read everything I could on UFOs. I still look at the valley every time I drive up Airline Way to check, just in case, especially at dusk. I really do. And there is like a round circle of dead grass still, all these years later.
Huh.
In that one, and they've never built there. They don't farm that.
Was it on the Navy property?
No, it's right on the farm at the bottom of Airline Way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the
Wow.
farm that's all by itself in the valley
Yeah,
there.
I know
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
my son lives right across the street from there.
Well, he should look out the window.
Look for UFOs. I'll have to tell him to be on the lookout.
But I've often heard, too, that people have told me that Whidbey Island was kind of a magnet for
Really?
phenomena.
What would be the cause of that? If they
No
said,
one's really said, but they talk about the connection between the base. There's an awful lot, I know in my research, that China Lake had an awful lot of UFO phenomena. And I personally came to believe that there's certain places on the earth that are more inclined to see those kinds of things. But I think you also have to be open to it.
Sure.
You can't have your mind frozen that
Yeah.
there's only us,
Right.
only us in the universe.
Yeah, well, that's a good segue into what I wanted to ask next as part of these stories to you both is a lot of times when people have these encounters that are life-changing, that, open their eyes to something other than ourselves, that's their first thought, is that it's something extraterrestrial, something outside of our plane of existence here on Earth. Is that the same and true for both of you? Is there any reason you wouldn't have just assumed this is a Navy experiment, or this is, maybe another country's technology or something like that? I mean, was it just so bizarre that it couldn't be another country or Navy test thing at the time? Or was there any ever doubt, like, maybe what I'm witnessing is a classified test or something like that?
There was never any doubt
Okay.
that it was something otherworldly.
Yeah.
Never. With the minute we saw it, and my mom slammed on the brakes, it was an overwhelming sense that this was not from here.
Of us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this was not from here.
Right.
And whatever it was doing it wanted. I think it kind of wanted us to see it, but I took Dick on a tour of the route that we took, and I said, okay, so this housing development wasn't there, this wasn't there, that wasn't there. It was totally black. There were no streetlights out there.
Right.
That's how it was with me too.
When it got dark.
Right.
Like you couldn't see
So there's
this
a very
far.
obvious string of lights that were there that should not be there.
Should not have been there. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We're like, whoa, wait a minute. So that's where I came to believe that there was things out there that we don't know about, and I think they've been visiting for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm. Gloria, same. Was
Same
there ever any
question.
doubt that it was
No, I
some
knew
sort of
it was
military
something.
thing? Or?
No, I knew it wasn't anything at all that I could think of that it would be. I mean, it was so unusual.
Right.
And like I said before, it was so unusual that it was totally silent.
Yeah.
Yet it moved and it hovered and it
defied laws of.
No, yeah. And it went, it seemed like it could go any direction, that it wanted to.
Yeah, it almost seems like in both of your stories here that these objects were not just here, but they were aware of our existence and aware of our capabilities, because in both of your stories, it appears as if they are avoiding at least the known radar limitations at that time and what we could pick up at that time. And even going off the cliff and kind of dropping back down low to go over the water, or going out that way on West Beach as opposed to climbing the hill and going above the tree line where the radar would have hit them at that time.
Yeah,
it seems like they're
really
aware
low.
of, they've got some sort of sensor or capability to know that we want to avoid.
And it can go so fast.
Right.
I mean, when it appeared, it was like it wasn't there, and then all of a sudden it was there.
Right.
Right there.
Yeah.
And we didn't really see it come. It was just there. We saw it leave, but not completely leave. You know?
Right.
It kind of went out of our sight. And then I can't remember for sure, but I think it was just
Gone.
Yeah. Like real fast.
Wow.
To the north.
Dick, could you describe for our listeners here that aren't familiar with West Beach kind of the proximity of these two events and relation to the base and the Puget Sound? Obviously, this is a big region full of other military bases and things like that too, but kind of just a big topical overview, geographical overview.
Sure. That's an important detail, I think. Yeah. For those of you who are listening that have not visited Whidbey Island, imagine a vertical straight line, and on the left side of that line is water, Puget Sound in this case. And we have Whidbey Island on the right side of that line. Well, these two sightings that we've heard just now took place within 2.3 miles of each other, right on the edge of the water, on the beach, so to speak. And I think that's significant. We've also heard that the object did not escape or leave by going vertical, which is what typically happens, but it flew horizontally and even downward for a portion of its flight. To me, that's very significant. We've heard that the motion was erratic in some sense, in the sense of instantaneous acceleration in most cases. And as Tim has said, we have a major naval air station probably within 2 miles at the most of Susan's sighting.
Yeah.
I think that's also important because being transmitted from that naval air station is a lot of radiomagnetic energy.
Right.
different frequencies and power densities and so forth, that can be picked up. We know that.
Right. Long distance.
Long distances. That's right. And so if we're dealing with an advanced technology, they're way ahead of us, and they can pick that up when they're 100 miles away or more
Yeah.
and so forth.
Yeah, and we've also, I think it's prudent to point out too, the Jim Creek Naval Radio Station is the largest radio station of its kind in the world, and is used still to this day to communicate with submarines from around the world. So, I mean, speaking of just a lot of energy that's put out between the entire mountainside is the antenna in this case, in that case. And so it's, from space and certainly greater distances, other things could have the ability to pick up signals of that kind and maybe curious enough to come down and check it out. So thank you for that. So that kind of is another good segue into the next question is, in your both Gloria and Susan belief of this object and now having the hindsight of all of this processing for years and years, do you believe that it was or ever had any kind of inkling that it was these objects were controlled or even inhabited by beings of some kind that were an intelligent being, or do you feel like it was more of a totally an equipment
Drone.
I want to say drone, kind of a machine run, maybe from somebody else or something else a greater distance away. And I know you mentioned that you kind of had an experience where you're looking back at yourself and sort of an out of body experience, so that may have played into your answer as well. But any kind of inkling or idea about that?
You know, it had to have been controlled by someone with intelligence because of the movements that it made.
Right.
And I don't know. I think it could have been someone controlling it from elsewhere.
Sure.
Or maybe there could have been some kind of being inside of it. I don't really know. But I feel like they knew we were there.
Yeah.
I think they probably knew we were there.
Right.
And they came close to
Yeah.
us. Maybe they wanted us to see them. I don't know. We were scared. We
But
were
the feeling-
ducking down in the tall weeds and scared.
Yeah, but I agree with
Maybe-
you. The feeling I had was that they intended for us. It almost
see them?
looked like there was a show that they put on when they did the zipping back and forth,
Yeah.
and then they just zipped away. And I always felt like I didn't feel the fear, but that's probably because my mother, dumped us out of the car and said, "Hey, go watch the aliens."
You were with your family. And
Yeah, and we were with, and I did find out, it took me 40 years, but my cousins were with us.
Yeah.
And that came about because the first thing they said to me, I hadn't talked to them in 40 years, and they got out of the car and they said, "I remember the UFO. We remember the UFO."
It's not something
And I
that
said,
you ever forget.
"Oh my God!"
Yeah.
They were the ones in the car
Right.
because they had come up after my dad died in November. They had come up that early June so they could berry pick with us.
Yeah.
And then they picked berries with us, and we went down to California for 6 weeks. And
Wow.
so that took 40 years to find out, because suddenly when they did that, I went, "Oh my God, you guys were the ones in the car."
Yeah,
I
right.
always thought it was the neighbors across the street.
Yeah.
So-
Well, and I mean, even the object responded to the movement of your car by backing away and as your mother's chasing this thing. So it's
Well,
obviously
yeah,
is
it was-
aware of you in some capacity.
Oh, I'm sure it was. I told it, and it didn't go fast. It just kind of hovered over the little hill that's
yeah,
there.
Yeah.
And
In the same way a weather balloon would, right?
well, of course,
Of course, yeah.
of course, yeah, because that happens all the time up here.
Right.
But yeah,
In the direction of the prevailing winds.
yeah, it did change. It changed my thought process. I don't know. I know my younger brother, I think that was the year he decided to become a pilot.
Okay.
He was 8 years old, and
Yeah.
I clearly remember him
this is
saying,
so cool.
"I'm going to the academy, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
be a
Yeah.
pilot."
Yeah.
And he did it,
Wow.
and he got all the way to commander.
Yeah.
And so he did see a lot of stuff. I'm
Right.
sure he saw more than He probably saw those little Tic Tacs.
Yeah, and we in
It's
our
coming
previous
out now.
Yeah.
It is.
They're,
In our-
they're
in our
able to talk about it.
previous
Yeah.
episodes,
Declassifies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Dr. Haines was Dick was sharing, the NARCAP program that he was a part of founding, and this was such a need at the time, probably still is a need at the time for people like your brother who cannot reveal these things that they see all
Yeah.
the time without fear of losing their clearance or their job or things like that. And so this NARCAP program allows anonymity to share sightings like this from around the world, which is pretty cool. But like you said, Gloria, yeah, they what was it? During COVID, they just sort of all of this other chaos is happening around us, and the news is full of all sorts of things all the time, and they just sort of slip in like, by the way, UFOs are real. Okay, back to your regular scheduled broadcast. It's like, wait a
Yeah.
second.
I
I would
heard
believe almost
something-
anything at this point in COVID history, but what are you talking about?
Yeah, just yesterday on the news, they were saying someone was on there talking. I didn't listen to the whole thing, but
Yeah.
about some more information that's coming out.
Right.
about
The Pentagon
UFOs.
started this
Yeah.
whole new branch to allow the exploration of, or at least, at the very least, an okayness, an ability to talk about this without being called crazy or losing your status in your job or your eval in your military standing or whatever,
And
at
they
least
would have.
having discussion for this. Yeah. So
Yeah.
the Pentagon's got this program now and this branch that's working through that, and a lot of the Navy stuff that they've picked up is now declassified that they can share, which is really cool. So, so share with me how you felt. You're both young at the time of the occurrence, but now you've got years of processing through this and sharing the story with others. Was it ever? Was it something you believed in previously, and were you okay and comfortable sharing that yourself? Because you're not pilots, you're not at fear of losing your job, you're not at, you're under some classified whatever. And so how did that play out? And obviously there's a religious context even, of like, especially Christian, like, I don't know, we're the only ones in the unit, like, we're all self-centered, right? And so how does that play out into a lot of that and being discreet on where you share things and, who you are and your family and things like that? Either one of you. It's kind of a broad question.
Yeah. Well, over the years, I would share it, but I wouldn't go out of my way to share it. If something came up, I'd like it,
Yeah.
people were talking about it or
Like this
something.
podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would share it. But,
Okay.
I never, like I said, really went out of my way to.
It wasn't
talk
something
about
you
it.
did at Women's Bible Study.
No.
Like part of your testimony.
No. And it's interesting to know, being a Christian, you always think, well, but there could be life somewhere
Sure.
else. I mean, we have, we're on Earth, but, who knows? When I met Dick, I was kind of surprised, that he had so much involvement in this because I always kind of thought it was kind of weird.
I try to keep a low profile
Yeah.
myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Not something you really talk about at
Yeah.
church.
And not a,
Or, these aliens and stuff.
right.
I met Dick we're both members of the same train club.
Oh, cool.
And I don't remember how.
Did you say train?
Trains,
Okay.
yeah. Trains, HO,
Dick,
railroad.
Dick, I learned something
model.
new about you every episode that
Yeah.
I have you on.
Come on over and see the layout.
Well,
He's got a layout. He's got a really beautiful layout.
this just took a wild turn of events. Continue, Susan.
He became one of my mentors in the train club.
In the train club. Okay.
I had never done trains. My husband and I got married in 2005, and he moved in with 700 model railroader magazines.
Wow.
And then promptly started tearing apart the garage and putting up, all kinds of wood and stuff. And then pretty soon I was sitting out there going, "What are you doing?" And he said, "You want to make some rocks?" And I said, "Rocks? I can make rocks?" He said, "Yeah." We got the plaster out, and he showed me how to make rocks, and I built this mountain.
Dick
and
is
I was,
cracking up
That's
over
it.
here.
I know. He's got a picture
Oh,
of
I've been
me.
there.
He's got a picture of me. I was up on top of the wood, and I was making rocks. I was putting a mountain together.
Interesting.
So that led to us talking one day, and he said something about his work with NARCAP, and I said, "UFOs. I have a UFO story." And he goes, "Okay, save that."
Right now we're focused on trains.
Right. Yeah, because we were
This
at
is
the
my
train.
train space.
And he said, he told me, he says, I'm going to call you up. And he did. He called me up and we interviewed. And then he set me up with the people who did the regression thing. And that was really interesting. It was really interesting because my feeling has always been somehow that, I don't know if you ever got that, Gloria, but that we were chosen. That we were chosen to be, for them to see.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't
Because
know.
not everybody gets that experience.
right.
But what I thought was funny about that letter, well, the report that my friend did, which was 2 days after I saw it,
Yeah.
that I had forgotten about. But she said Mary and I had been walking to my house and we'd been discussing UFOs. We
I
never
picked
talk
that up
about
when you
thi-
read it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we never talk about things like that. But we had
Yeah.
read some articles, and I said Reader's Digest and Life magazine. Sometimes an article would come out, and we were talking about that and
Yeah.
what we thought about that when this thing appeared.
Huh.
And I'd kind of forgot about that over the years.
Right.
But
Clearly, you both were open to this.
Yeah.
And what I hear you saying is that transfers from a CE1 to a CE5.
oh,
Expound.
yeah, what is
Well,
Conductor.
CE1 is a passive experience. I mean, you didn't do anything to like wave at it or flashlight
Oh,
or something
no.
like that. A CE5 is a deliberate human response which elicits a response from the phenomenon, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you've just told us that you were apparently talking about
We were
this
talking
subject.
about that
and
right
then it
before we
appeared.
saw it.
Then it appeared.
And I had forgotten about that. I mean, 60 years ago.
Sure.
But because I told the friend at school that the 2 days later, I wouldn't have made that up. So we were, and then I kind of remembered, yeah, we were talking about some
That's
of those
very important.
things that we had read about.
Did you?
I thought that was odd.
You may not be able to remember now, but do you think it's possible that you wanted to see one at that time?
Well, maybe we thought it would be kind of cool if we saw one, but then when it happened, we were like, "Oh, this is scary."
Never mind.
Hide.
Not so
I
much.
take it back. I take it back.
Because for a few seconds, you're wondering, is this going to abduct us or
sure, yeah.
something? It was pretty frightening,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
but it was all done and over pretty quick.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm so
Yeah.
glad that you wrote that letter 2 days later.
Yeah, that I
That your
told
friend
her.
I wish
about it.
everybody would do that.
Yeah, and I for even forgotten about it until she gave me that back.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Cool. So
So
you're-
someone's listening, maybe.
Yes. Someone's listening.
kinda
Okay, where are you?
creepy.
We're ready for it.
Yeah.
Keep checking. My mom was very, very Christian.
Okay.
And when I remember when you were interviewing her, you asked her a question, and she asked you about how do you hold this idea that there's other people out there and then be
Yeah.
this.
Where do you put this in the faith?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you fit that in?
Yeah.
And-
Yeah, I'd like to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What-
yeah. I think
what
we'd
his
all like to hear that.
opinion is on that.
Yeah,
How
I
do you
would.
fit
I
that
would
all
like-
in, if you don't mind?
Okay.
Not to put you on the spot, but
Yeah.
Sure. Well, as a Christian myself, I have a fundamental belief that God is infinitely creative. And what that means is that he establishes himself and his capability, and I don't. I have no control over that. He's an independent agent, so to speak. And because he's infinitely creative, he created not only our planet, but all the stars and the galaxies and the space dust and all that, everything that's in the universe. And that he created life on this planet in a very creative way in all forms.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take long to see this level of creativity that God has created. And if he is doing it on one planet, who am I to say he didn't do it on other planets? And astronomers are finally admitting. I can remember years ago when they said Earth is the only place where habitable sentient life exists.
Yeah.
Not anymore. There are hundreds, thousands and thousands of planets they've discovered, water planets that can support life as we know it, carbon-based life. And that doesn't even admit the possibility of silicon-based life, you see, a whole nother genre of life. And so that's my simple-minded explanation that somebody on another planet has a space program. And they are 1,000 or 10,000 years older than we are and more advanced. And they've sent all these probes out in all different directions. And they've gotten here before our probes have gotten to them. That's all.
Interesting.
That's good.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Thank
I
you
like
for
that.
sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's that's now I'm like writing down in my mind things to talk about on future podcasts because we could go that direction, but I'm still hung up on this train thing. So like, I could go that direction. Man, there's so many opportunities here. Do we call you the Grand Conductor? I mean, like, what is your new title?
I think Grand Conductor's pretty good.
Yeah, that is.
All right, so I want to sort of wrap this story up here with a final question, and Dick mentioned a little bit of it. You know, how has this changed you, or has it changed you post the event? But I also want to, you know, you've kind of answered that, but also to tack on to the same question, how has it changed how you share to your own family members, to your own friends, to your own inner circles, and teach them? Because one of the big keywords for me in my life is legacy. And wanting to be able to share this kind of stuff with my kids, share this kind of stuff with my listeners, with people that I come in contact with, and discipleship is part of that process for me as a believer, but also just our life story. So, how do you share this? How do you do it delicately? How do you do it in a way that doesn't get you the tinfoil hat mentality, you know, and put you up on some poster? And you can go any direction with that, but like, there's obviously discretion involved, as you mentioned, Gloria. You talk about it when people ask, but you're not just out on the street corner like, I've seen they're real. And so, you know, locked up in the loony bin. So there's a balance there. How do you define that balance? How have you learned to do that? Where do you take it for your kids or family, and where do you want to leave that someday going forward?
Well, I can
Go ahead,
tell you
Susan.
about my mother.
Yeah.
When we all started having kids, my mother and my dad bought a trailer up at the Glen at Maple Falls, which is as dark as Whidbey Island was in 1964. And she started lining up all the grandchildren and taking them on the alien walks.
Oh, cool.
I swear. No flashlights were allowed unless a car was coming.
Nice.
You had to walk in the dark, in the woods, down this road, and she would point out the satellites and tell them that the aliens were watching them. I don't even know how you do that to your own grandkids because they were little. They were little.
Yeah.
And then my brother would run ahead and hide in the bushes and roll out
Oh, no.
on our way back. And then they would all run screaming to the So that's how we carried on the alien tradition in our family.
Sounds like fun.
And my adult children have asked me questions about it. And,
Okay.
and I tell them the story, and they know, you know, but I don't know that I'm going to be the grandma with the alien. I asked him, I said, I hope that didn't like ruin you guys for life.
Right.
The sheer
That's
terror.
the family we don't talk about. That's
That's the family that doesn't. Actually, they don't. Could be the reason. But no, that's my husband. When he and I met, I told him about this story, and he told me the story of when he worked in the oil fields in California on the water, and how they had seen
Some strange
UFOs.
Wow.
And
they
confirmed it with the crew boat that was coming in, and they all went, "Did you see that?" So, you know, he's very accepting of it.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, he always tells me, well, I got a story too.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So it sounds sort of like just normalizing it, I guess, in conversation and just being okay with that.
And just being okay. I even brought it up at my mom's service.
Okay.
I told them, I was telling the people that showed up that she she was so curious, and she was always chasing something, including a UFO off of Airline Way one night with all of us kids in the car.
Yeah.
Right.
What a story.
Yeah. And I said, I'm normalizing it,
Yeah,
like you
yeah.
said, that
Okay.
this was in church and everybody went,
Yeah.
No, for real, she did.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's part of it.
That
yeah.
was my mom.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Susan. Gloria?
Well, I've shared this over the years with my kids.
Yeah.
And I think some of my grandkids too. And I did also find a report that our youngest daughter did when she
Okay.
was in school. I think she was in about 7th or 8th grade.
Okay.
And I had told her the whole story, and she wrote up a report for it in school, and she got an A+ on it or something.
Sweet.
Anyway, I still have a copy of that too.
Cool.
But I just tell them what happened.
Yeah.
And, let them decide, I guess, to whether they think their grandma's crazy or or what. But I never have met anyone that didn't believe me.
Yeah.
They
They all still
didn't
love
take
you.
me too
They
seriously.
still
you
come
know,
over
like,
for dinner.
Yeah.
They're still.
Yeah, originally our parents, Mary's parents and my parents, didn't seem like they were very interested or, anything like that. But they didn't say, oh, well, I don't think you really saw that. You must
Yeah.
have just been making
Did they
it
ever
up.
come back around in sharing with them years later?
Oh,
Or
I think they would say, like, oh, yeah, Gloria saw a UFO.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Sure.
But I don't know. They never saw one themselves, I don't think. So
Yeah.
I don't know what they thought, really. But I think they thought we did see something.
Yeah. So how has this, for you specifically as a Christ follower, how has this impacted your faith and your testimony, or what you view of what you knew of Christianity at the time and what you think of it now? And is it sort of the same as what Dick has shared? Is it more nuanced than that?
Well, I asked Jesus to be my Savior when I was 8.
Okay.
So this was, a few years later. And I knew it was real, that what I saw,
Yeah.
I knew must be something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really think too much about it, I
Right.
guess.
And open to it still to this day. It
Yeah.
hasn't closed you off.
I've always
and-
wondered if I would see another one
Yeah.
or some kind of phenomenon or something.
Right. Been
but-
on the lookout for it. as
Yeah,
you-
and I just figure, like Dick said, that God is creator of the universe and
Yeah.
everything in life. He could do whatever he wanted to
Yeah,
or choose
yeah.
to do.
Right. I think that, I don't know if we discussed this, I don't remember on our one of our previous podcasts, but that's the danger part of that is taking it so far and saying that, okay, now there's other ways to Christ or other ways to do this, and it becomes more of a universalism kind of truth. That part can
Yeah,
get, it can get crazy or out, depending on how far you extrapolate the experience, but definitely just being open to God, who is the master creator, and that kind of stuff is cool. And then normalizing it in your like you're doing with the kids and grandkids too. If this is what I saw, believe it or not, but
Yeah.
I'm convicted by this. It's not something I'm just going to be gaslighted into a weather balloon or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, yeah.
No,
I
we
knew
saw
this
it.
was something
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
very real and not something that just could have been something other, like
Yeah.
weather balloon or whatever. It was very
Cool.
something really there.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for your
Thank
time
you.
today. This has been
Thank you.
very wonderful and enlightening for me. I know it has been for the audience. Thank you to the audience for staying with us through a non-professional recording studio environment here in my home office with dogs running down the hall and kids banging on the door. So thank you all for that as well. And I guess it sounds like the next episode we're going to be doing is on trains. So tune in next time for the episode with Dr. Dick Haines, the master conductor, as we continue before he throws water on my studio here.
Yeah.
So, and thank you both, Susan and Gloria, for your time today. I greatly
you.
greatly
It's been
appreciate
fun.
it. So,
Yeah, it has been.
Thank you.
good.
And as my kids would say,
Thanks for listening.
thank you for listening to another episode of the Anna Vivo podcast. We welcome your feedback and ideas. You can learn more about us by simply Googling the word Anna Vivo. This podcast is supported by listeners like you. I am a licensed real estate broker with Compass Real Estate and a nationwide real estate matchmaker. We consult with you for free, find and vet the right real estate professional that specializes in the area and niche you need, are paid by that professional, and they get clients like yourself who want and need their unique specialty or winning track record. If you or someone you know is in the market to buy or sell real estate anywhere in the U.S., don't simply web search the highest paying advertiser. Let us use our licensed experience to find and vet the real and best professional for you. It costs you nothing but a phone call or email with me, and has saved my clients financially and emotionally. I'd be honored to serve, and you can reach me direct by email at tim.c.miller@outlook.com. And as always, to God be the glory.